Welcome to Wellness Radio with Dr. Jeanette Gallagher as your host. Her show discusses topics of health, wellness, and spirituality and is about discovering your place in this great universe from your cells to the cosmos. Along with her guests in casual conversation, she strives to ask the difficult questions that may be holding you back from a vibrant life and shares new ideas that may inspire you to make a change in your life that you only can see in your dreams. And now, here is Dr. Jeanette Gallagher.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Wellness Radio. This is Dr. Jeanette Gallagher, and it's a pleasure to have you with us here this evening. Tonight we are going to be talking about how we are navigating our days, how is our spirit and our soul taking on this human form and navigating the matrix, the place on this earth in which we are having a consciousness, a feeling, an emotion, an experience, and all of these interactions with other humans. What is it all about? Are we bumping into things and we're saying, oof, this feels good. Oh dear, this is going to take me out. Or still say, what's going on? I have no clue. Many humans are now waking up to the idea that they're asking so many questions. Why is this happening? What is this all about? Where am I going? We look back on decades, and we really didn't have those questions many decades ago. We pretty much were following the template, the plan, and navigating along our road just as we saw fit, just as our ancestors did, and we just knew it was the way things were going to be. Yet we kind of hit smack into the year 2000, and all of a sudden, things started shape-shifting. The internet came along, and the world changed. How are you doing today? And how are you going to be able to see it going forward? That's what we'll be talking about today. My guest is Cathleen Beerkens. Her book is Your Creator Matrix, How to Use Optimal Wellness and Quantum Healing to Master Your Story and Create Your Reality. Cathleen, thank you so much for joining us today. It's a pleasure to have you with us.
Oh, it's so nice to meet you and be here with your audience.
So glad to have you, Kathleen. I think just as I shared, many of us are in the older age, I would say over 50, are definitely saying, oh, boof, what the heck is going on? How did I get here? What's going on? And, and how do I even get out of this? You almost feel like you're in a spin cycle, perhaps?
Yes, of course. I think so. I think even young people are asking because the world is in so much chaos at this time. Yeah, it's scientifically almost, such a special, unique moment on the planet. And people, because of the chaos, they don't always understand it and they feel uncomfortable. So it's really, once you understand what's happening, you start to feel better about it.
Yes. I also liken it to, we are pretty much the bridge generation, I call it, because we have so much ingrained in us as our ancestral story. Yet we are on the bridge where we can see both sides. We can now see the change and that which we can see forward, but we also, too, see that which is backward. In other words, a lot of this is about history, evolution, and how things are evolving on a timeline, perhaps.
Yes, exactly. So I speak about this in my book that, as we have to understand that we are actually spiritual beings having a temporary human experience in the body. And when we were young, Dr. Gallagher, you and I, this was not accepted, actually. It was, yes, there was religion talking about all of this in its own way. But in general, if you look at the mainstream or just general people, they were very, very materialistic. At least I found that when we were young. And we were just very busy in a linear way, except for the fact that my mother was from and father were in the 60s generation, and my aunt. And that influenced me because that was kind of the beginning of the shift. So they were asking questions, that one generation, the 60s, but it was different than now. Now we're really in it. So it was kind of, you could say, it was the beginning in the 1960s of, I guess I would say, the shift was coming and the change on Earth. And we were in this period of before, let's say the last century, 26,000 years. It's called the precession of the equinox. And that is the time when Earth was spinning through space in the darkness, actually. It was in a very low frequency, very much duality, very dark, a lot of dark, more than light. You would say dark and light. We are in duality. And so that means opposition. And so now, as of the 60s and last century, we started getting towards this point where we are right now, which is Earth entered a photon belt of a lot of light. And what that means is that Earth, all of us being on Earth, are now influenced by this high-frequency light that we haven't been in since for 26,000 years. It's a long time. So even though we are influenced by our ancestors and all the stories and the linear way of thinking and all the stuff on our DNA is actually being activated right now to awaken, to use more of our self, let's say, more of our whole being. But it's not a comfortable process because as we're awakening on the planet, we're seeing, it's almost like if you took a flash of light and you put it in a dark room, suddenly you would see, and let's say you didn't see and take care of all those parts of the room because the room was so dark, suddenly you see all the cobwebs, you see all the areas that have just been hidden and it's always been going on, but we just didn't see it. And so now we see it and it's like, oh, that's corrupt. Oh, that's not serving us. Oh, that system is not really good for our children. Oh, so we're really in a moment where the old structures are falling and we are going, oh my goodness, where do we go from here? What's happening? But all along, our inner world, our whole being is shifting in higher frequency, which is for some of you maybe a new term, but it just means that we are actually our whole being, our body, mind, spirit, complex, our souls are in a new time of evolution, as you just mentioned.
Right. When we talk about the awakening, I always look at it as there have been many seekers, knowers, and truth seekers amongst us. If we look back at it and we say that our soul is truly an eternal being, and it's just this human timeline for this moment in this space and time, a lot of us are now coming into this over the past several decades where we've always had a knowing of. You shared in the book about your story about knowing things, as you went through life. I know for myself, I've had many tumultuous times. I've seen angels and ghosts. I've interacted with spirit almost all the time, and it's always been that way. And I've always known about the light. I remember myself all the time standing at the, in the corner, just there radiating light and observing things. So it's been very clear as I've kind of kept the light on, so to speak. I think sometimes we say, oh, but I've had all of these things go on in my life. It must have been, I'm not on the right path. And quite frankly, it might be the opposite for you. Those things have been there to remind you. Those things have been there to guide you. Those things have been there because they needed you to be there. People needed me to stand in the corner to be the light. It wasn't about me being there and having to experience whatever was going on. So it's up to us to be able to choose to say what the story might be going forward versus becoming the victim of it. So if we look at everything that happened in our life, might we turn it around and say, how was I the person that was there to guide? How was I there to just shine light? And is that enough in this time, so to speak?
That's such an interesting thought. First of all, I always say things don't happen to us, they happen for us. So if we start to get out, when we're evolving very quickly right now, we start to get out of this victim and perpetrator and, savior mentality, these kind of storylines that we had on Earth for eons where, you played a role. You're not your story, but you played the story. And you were just having these experiences to help you to evolve. But when you say the things you're saying, that some of us, we're just here to shine our light. If we were, many of us, I call this group of people on the planet right now, light workers. Many light workers came now in this last period of 20, even longer, like since the 60s, 70s, even longer. They've been coming to help the Earth increase their frequency. So it's almost like, if you can imagine, we just bring all these, and they're called starseeds, to these high-frequency beings to the planet to help the Earth navigate the shift to go from 3 density to 5 density reality, which is a huge thing I'm saying here. So if you haven't heard of these things, I know I had to understand them. But what you're saying is that when you were little, you could see things that nobody could explain. Many of the light workers and the starseeds who are highly spiritually evolved, many have seen it and are like you, and others who maybe are more earthly evolved, and it's not a better or worse. We have just different gifts. So like I have abilities to heal. Some other people have abilities with music. I have nothing with music. So I don't, I have people I know who can play beautiful piano, and I admire it, but I never obviously developed that gift, but I can from nowhere just help people heal. So I think it's like we have these gifts, and some of us are very spiritually evolved right now to help the Earth to go in this new direction, which is a much higher frequency. And so I think you're right that we were just holding the light. But I believe that that's who we really are. You know, human beings, all beings, but human beings are just radiating a divine presence of, we're all the same. We're actually one. We're all connected. We're just unique expressions of that energy or source. And I think where we're going is we're starting to understand it on another level. Not like I was raised Catholic, so I was raised very, with the church and going to church. And then all of a sudden you could see the next generation right behind me wasn't going to church that much. And it was a real shift. And I started asking, why do we go to church when, I'm hearing the priest, but I actually feel I know more. I'm meditating, and is the priest he's praying? Is it the same thing? Just asking questions like this. So I think we started asking some serious questions in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, and even 90s, and now those questions are more clear. Yes, I remember learning to meditate, and everyone was like, that's crazy, meditation doesn't work, imagine. And now it's just normal, we know the science, it works. So I think, and it brings us into that inner who we really are. It connects us to our divinity, our unique, who we are. And that's just one way, obviously, prayer. There's many ways to connect. But I think, when you see the evolution in such a short period since the 1960s, it's actually remarkable.
I think of it also, too, in the 60s, I was in grade school, and I was playing the pipe organ in the Catholic Mass. I would play about 10, 15 of these a week. And I was probably 4th or 5th grade, and I was singing the Latin Mass with the priest. That's how the Masses were at that time. And I'll distinctly remember, one day I went into church. They had the altar turned around. Everything was in English, and they had a guitar. And I said, it's going to be the death of religion, because you've taken out the mystery and the mystique of being able to say there's something greater than ourselves. And you've now almost brought it into this human realm, so it had to be rationalized and deduced. And then that's where I think a lot of the religion has kind of as we said, people have kind of moved away from it because it got to be so commonplace. It didn't come to be that it was something greater. It wasn't, we used to use the word exalted at that time. It wasn't this thing of reverence, of something that, yes, there is something greater than us. It got to be very much, it's really all about how the church is about us and, bring it down to our level. Where in essence, truly the awakening is about expanding ourselves forward. Instead of bringing the higher down to us, we are now expanding ourselves to go forward. I can distinctly remember when I first started this radio show, I think it was 16 or 17 years ago, we were talking about going to the third and the fourth dimension, it was like conversation or whatever. And it came out of my mouth because I have zero filters and everything comes out. And I said, honey, I'm in the 23rd. I don't know where you are, but y'all need to catch up, and because I really had a perspective of seeing things from, such a different place. And I think that's very important to understand. We're, just as you shared, we are all given a thread to be able to weave the matrix of where we are. We are not given the same thread to continuously go along the same line. In other words, when people say, what is my purpose? What is my mission? They're seeking it out. Do you need someone to tell you so that you can follow in the story? Or perhaps maybe are you looking for someone to open up the door so you can find your own space and time? That's the really crux of where we are at this time, don't you think?
Yeah, well, I think, first of all, I kind of sum it up like the church was telling me. I just am reiterating some thoughts. Mm-hmm. The church was telling me that who I was determined from the outside. My behavior, what I did every day, blah, 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 blah. But that didn't ever feel right because I had a knowingness that actually I just am. It had nothing to do with what I did. And so I think that is a real shock to humanity because we've been in the Industrial Revolution the last century of just building, lots of innovation in technology. So, and now we're catapulting this technology in this century. So we need to get to the basics we have to grow as our technological advancements that need to be in alignment with our spiritual advancement. And that's what we need to realize right now, that the frustrations that are happening on the planet are because the technology is so far and our spiritual awakening is not the same for everybody. So, for instance, some might be further than others, but that's not a judgment. We're all going to get there. There's no race. Right. It doesn't matter where you are. It's all about the ability to know that you are connected to this whole and that you're more than just your physical, your mental ability, your ability to think thoughts and belief systems and your emotions and all of who you are one. And all of this is, I call it the creator matrix because we all create our own reality with all parts of ourselves. And so in order to be a really strong creator or co-creator with Source, I say you need to be connected to Source and you need to have all of these parts and aspects of yourself in harmony with what you truly want to bring into your reality. So science is showing us that actually it's a science that how we create our reality. Like it's not something that's this pie in the sky. It's actually quantum physics is showing us that there is real science behind how we create our reality with our thoughts and our words and sound and how powerful all of those aspects of self-expression are and how they influence our field. So it's exciting time because, before we didn't even know we were creating our reality. We're just sort of, as you said, surviving and playing these roles. And now we're going way beyond survival and realizing that there's an internal power within each one of us that is for the benefit of all. That and this is all about love, actually, and the energy, the highest frequency of love and joy. That when these are just beautiful frequencies. Unfortunately, on the duality we live in, you cannot not always be in them all the time. But I think as we are evolving, we're going to learn how to be in them all the time. I think we're going to master this emotional thing, this emotional journey.
I think it kind of ekes out of you almost. I thought of this last night. I saw a book that I was going to get for my grandkids. And I think it was an encyclopedia of what kids want to know or whatever. And immediately in my consciousness, I saw it play out. And I was giving it to the kids. They're 2, 4, and 6. And I said, this is a great story to read, but just understand this is where it is today, and this is going to change. So you can just take this information and say, oh, this is awesome. And when you meet up with it again, say, ooh, this is awesome even still, and see how it expands. And I think that's very important to note. When we talk about the body, mind, the spirit, and the soul connection, distinctly, I've been in healthcare for over 5 decades now. When I went to medical school and all this information, it was books. It was written books, and the books were from years before. These are the old books. These are the books that we used to use, blah, 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 blah. In fact, I still have them in storage, and those are the books. And even when we went, we would have, to be able to study the body, we actually studied a physical body. They don't even do these things anymore. And I can distinctly remember when I was in the 50s and 60s, that was when antibiotics were, and the doctor came to your house. Then all of a sudden in the 80s, people were starting to go to college. Our ancestors, even my parents didn't even finish 5th, 6th, 7th, or 8th grade. Yet I was going to college. In other words, evolution is on warp speed. Then we look at the 90s. It was all about how can we perfect the body. Plastic surgery was, oh my gosh, it was everywhere, Then you hit the year 2000 and kind of people said, oops, we're not going to do that anymore. So the idea of this body-mind-spirit connection is new for many people. There's some of us, it's always been there. We understand it and everything because we've kind of been engaged in it. But I can honestly tell you is that when you seek help from either one of those aspects, you will at times get a very tunnel vision of the aspect. Because when you go to a heart doctor and you say, I'm really feeling really strange, like I'm dizzy and like my feet hurt or whatever, but I'm at the heart doctor. He says, go to a foot doctor, go to a head doctor. And they separated it out even still today, which in essence, it's the blood vessels that are feeding all of those organs that is that which needs to be looked at. And then we think about it, and then we say, but I'm dizzy, and they'll say, oh, well, we can't find anything wrong, and then maybe you need to go to a mental health mind doctor. And then we say, oh, well, then maybe you go even further, maybe you need to go to a psychic or something because it's out of this world or this realm. But really to understand, it's about exploring the options. Many people will say, I'm sick all the time, I'm having this going on. I'll say, that's awesome. What are those? Can you share the story? Tell us about the options. What's been going on? And I always flip it. That's awesome. That's very cool. Tell us about it. Because our stories are which helps others say, my goodness, I didn't even think of it that way. And isn't that the perspective that we wish to share with others, For myself, I have health conditions all the time. I go to the doctor sometimes, and when I go with the concept, what am I going to share with him today to help him figure something else further? I'm not going there to get a fix. I'm going there to have a conversation and share something with him. So I think, can we allow ourselves to see that there's a different dialogue coming up and be in awareness of it and say, how can I get on that train, perhaps?
Yeah, I like that idea. That's funny that you said that because I've been discussing with a lot of people right now are having physical challenges too, mental challenges, emotional challenges, all of it right now because of all the chaos. People are just all the things. There's a lot of ideas about that, like the timelines are merging together right now. So we are influenced by all the beings that we possibly have been and have not cleared and have not healed. So maybe right now it feels really uncomfortable because we are faced with it. But we always have a choice with how we're going to, I guess what you're saying is we always have a choice how we're going to look at what's happening to us. So we can look at it like it's horrible and it's terrible that I'm not in perfect harmony all the time. Or we could say, this situation is happening to bring me to a higher level of awareness, a consciousness. And sometimes we need to feel it to do it. And that's not always easy, that feeling. So, or whatever we're going through at the time. So, like, I'll give an example. If somebody has a chronic health condition and they want to heal it, and they continually, they do everything to heal it, and it keeps showing up, it's kind of fun to look at that, like, in a different way. So instead of like, oh, here's that headache again, go, okay, headache, hi, what are you trying to tell me? And be kind of neutral about it, like not anything. Just, what are you trying to tell me? I'm listening. There you are again. And it's strange, but I have been working with people for so long, helping them heal, and that the mindset, getting above the story or taking that helicopter view and not really getting attached to the outcome, helps so much. To just that I guess what we're really talking about is the energy of acceptance. Right. It's becoming like kind of like accepting where you're at with whatever's showing up. And then from there, having the faith that whatever's showing up is going to be for your benefit.
But also, too, Kathleen, I think the idea is that there's many other conversations going on in which people are have not been engaged in yet. I know for myself, being a psychic, a shaman, a medium, in healthcare, all of these different things, sometimes we get stuck in one of our labels, and we don't understand the other label might have been it. So I know for myself, I have head pressure, headaches my entire life. I can tell you my entire life. And many times people will say, well, what's going on with it or whatever. I said, I really have a really bad headache today, because that's the conversation that they wanted to hear. However, I flip it to myself and I say, I'm having head pressure today. My head is feeling pressure today. I am okay, but my head is feeling pressure. And I go, where is the pressure? And then I notice, there's a hurricane. I live in New Orleans. There's a hurricane coming. It could be that all of a sudden there's earthquakes in certain areas. The shaman of myself picks it up. It could be that it's the full moon, and my knees are swelling like crazy, and it's inducing pressure in my entire being. So we don't attribute that we are a being that has all of these other labels. Everybody has them. They just haven't figured them out yet, these qualities, these aspects, and these connections. And once you do, you say, oh, my goodness, that's awesome. So, okay, today, boy, really a pressure today, and I'm looking, where's the Schumann resonance is doing today? I'm like, oh, awesome, that's it. And all of a sudden, it will say, okay, then I can move my shoulders a little bit more freely, and then I don't pay attention to it anymore. It may still be there, but it isn't my focus as the victim or the crutch. That is the key to the whole story, perhaps.
Well, I like how you brought up the solar flares, because they are happening as of 2020. They are big speeds, and these coronal mass ejections are very powerful from the sun, and they do have an influence on us, and they do. Each person's unique. And so there's a lot of influences on this awakening process that, we can't really understand fully at this moment. Okay. So I think if we just get into this mode of acceptance of all, and not worry and not go into the old patterns of whether, like, maybe some people deny everything that goes on like that, or they have all kinds of people. We're not all victims. We're not all the same. So if some people do the victim thing, then they do the victim thing, and that's their pattern. Others do the anger thing, and whatever, and others do the total denying, like drinking. Let's just have a beer and get out of here. So we're all different. So whatever our coping mechanisms are unique for us, and I think that if we can love ourselves a little more every day, that means just accepting ourselves and all of our patterns and being able to look at them with love to ourselves and saying, okay, so this is me. This is how I cope. Yeah. This is how I do things. And there's no right one way, but I would like to do it a little bit. How could I do this a little bit better for myself? How could I just go a little bit quicker out of these stories? And then I think when you start asking that kind of question, as you said, you get answers, and you go through things much quicker.
Also, to the idea of the word change, you talk about change in your book, and I always liken it to, using all my abilities and qualities, I say change, I think of a stake in the ground. You know, you're just putting your staff in the ground, and you say, I'm done. And then many times people will say, oh, I made a decision, and all of a sudden they get sick. And they say, oh, I must be being blocked. I'm not supposed to do that change. It's not the right path. They'll say, what if, when you put that stake in the ground, you said you were done, your vibration then changed, and all of a sudden, all of the sticky gunk that was stuck in your vibration is now rising up and has to be expelled. Might you be open to saying, oh, honey, I want to get as sick as I possibly can because I want to get rid of this, because that frequency is really gross today. And wouldn't that be a different way of looking at the perception? Because I think we have gotten stuck in, Kathleen, the old ways of, if something is wrong, go to the doctor and he'll fix it. Well, let me tell you, when they come to me and they say my regular doctor can't fix me, you're my last resort, and I'll say, it's awesome. Thanks so much for coming. So tell me, where are you today? Where would you like to go? And their teeth about drop out of their head because they really want to be back to that which they pictured they were. So they feel less than. And I think that's important to understand, is that evolution is not about going back to the times in which we're happy, joyous, perfect, and you could run and jog and all this other stuff. Well, let me tell you, I'd love to jog again. But the time to say, I'm here in this space and time, that doesn't fill up my space and time. And you come to a place of peace and silence and a little bit more of contemplation. That's where we'll eventually be going, perhaps as a collective. So just understand that all of this exists out around us. And no matter where you are in any of this, it's awesome for today. Maybe?
Yes, I think so. I think when you are in that state, by the way, if you are even being in the present moment, like even that moment of now, which we know is so powerful, most people are having a hard enough time just doing that because, as you just said, tend to go in the past when they get triggers. They get triggers during their day, them to memory, that take them to a emotion, that bring them back in time. And so the training is really, the new training on the planet is really, okay, where do I spend my time? Do I spend it in the past? Do I constantly get triggered and go back in time to what I thought was the perfect time, or not? Maybe it was a trauma and I can't remember it. Or do I go constantly to the future because I'm always worried about what's going to happen tomorrow, and I'm thinking about all the things that can go wrong, or the things that could go right, or the things that might not happen, or they might happen. And therefore, I'm never in the moment of now anyway, because I'm constantly worried. So being in the moment of now is so hard because, as you said, we weren't trained for this. And this is the spiritual we need to be in now. So every human has to learn constantly, their consciousness as they're going through their day, say, oops, where am I? I'm in the past. Okay, let's breathe. Let's go to the moment of now, because only in this moment of now do I have any power to change my reality. I can't create my reality and be the full creator I am when I'm in the past or in the future. So you are correct. Being in the past and the future are habits, and they are learned and inherited, sometimes on the DNA based on fears. And so we need to kind of unlearn some old habits of humanity and This is not easy when we have a world that we have right now.
And it will take some time, because if you look at healthcare, it's all about go get this test and we'll be able to see, go all these prevention tests. No, they're not. They're not prevention tests. They're diagnostic tests that you go every year to see if you're in that state yet. They have nothing to do with preventative tests. There's no such thing. So the idea is it shows up a lot around us. Get insurances, because it will prevent, hardship and heartache later. I know it here, with hurricanes, it's like, honey, open the door and let everything float away, whatever, So, and we think about it, the idea of, well, if I take all of these supplements and I eat all this good diet, I'm going to be in this good space and time. Well, okay, but all of a sudden, if the roof falls out and you have to be in a different space and time, does that mean you won't survive, or you'll be making judgments that will further increase your separation? And I think the idea is that, can we accept that we ebb and flow through all of these stories right now in our existence in the year 2025? We are at such an ebb and flow. We are going up and down at warp speed, and say, be okay with that. So if you're a healer and all of a sudden you're as sick as anything and you just can't get yourself going, awesome. That's great. If you are someone who's always having a lot of worries and a lot of pains, awesome. That's cool. If you're in a wheelchair, last year I got so sick, honey, I had to do a wheelchair. And I was talking to someone, and they looked at me really weird, and were getting ready to leave. And I said, did you ever know that a wheelchair does not have an age requirement? And they just looked at me. And what I was trying to say was, feel into your moment, whatever it is. If you have a walker, that's great. Put some glitter on your shoes so it reminds you can sparkle. Or, for myself, I love stilettos. Put them on when you're sitting down. Doesn't mean you have to walk in them. It just means you like them. So find your joy and expound on that. If you have one thing a day that you love to eat, find it and have joy in it, and it nurtures body, mind, and soul. Don't you think perhaps that is the window of possibility that you and I both share in our work and as you shared in your book?
Absolutely. I think if you can be in the moment and learn to be grateful for whatever's showing up in your life, and you can learn to explore that and be in a state of this acceptance that we're talking about, then you have agreed that you're not the storyline. You're not speaking up with the story. You're not, the story's just happening, and it's going to happen all the time because we're co-creating with other people. So sometimes we're influenced by the other story. So it's not what is happening to you, it's how you're going to look at it that makes the difference. So if you're willing to be in the present moment, do the work, this is spiritual work, to try to be in this moment of now, and instead of looking at the thing that's showing up that I don't like it and judging it and being in resistance with it, that resistance will keep you in a sort of low frequency. Whereas if you can look at it sort of in another way, and you can say, okay, it's showing up. I have a choice now how I want to be with this story. I can make it lighter, move it. I can shift that energy of that story. I am a creator. So when you realize you're creating your reality, it's a game changer, because then you're not a victim stuck in the story. No story, whether you're sick or not sick. That's just one storyline. There's so many. You can be poor, not poor. You can be married, miserable, happy, single. You can have so many storylines. So it's not just healthy, right? But if you go to sick and healthy, if we look at quantum physics, what we focus on expands. When we're constantly focusing on being ill, not feeling well, someone told me I was mentally ill. Okay, then I'm not okay. If we constantly have those storylines playing out in our heads, then we will create more of that. So the question is, what is the storyline that we are allowing So I always love this law of allowing. What are we allowing in our lives? What storyline? What way are we looking at it? That's also an allowance. And I think it's a combination of what we've allowed and have we digested. So I don't think with my work of working with people, you can just deny it either. You need to actually have a story and process the emotion. You can't get stuck in the emotion either, because if you just deny it, unfortunately, cells have memories and are also sentient beings. Our cells are trillions of cells that change every day, and they have a field around them, a biofield of information, because actually our body works a lot like a computer. It holds data. And so what's important is that we as the creator say what we want to hold, what we want to hold on to. So we first have to become aware of what we are holding on to sometimes and to release it. And sometimes you don't even need to know what it is. So like, for instance, I teach all my students, every day when you wake up, it's so healthy to just say, everything that's not mine, that doesn't serve my highest good, I give permission for it to leave now. I command it to leave now. And all of my students, they all say, I feel so much better. So a lot of times we're carrying a lot of stuff from our past that we don't even realize, or things from other people, their energies, their moods. And like you said, if you're a shaman, maybe something far away that you can connect with. But if you create this space for yourself to clear and really like clean your aura, clean your body, clean your mind, clean your spirit from anything that's not yours, you will feel lighter and better, and you will be able to address things in a different way. But I do want to address the prevention idea. So if we look at quantum physics and we look at the idea of that we create our reality, and that quantum physics says that we're all connected, that actually there's a universal field that we're all connected to. And if we think the word prevention, the next thought is always, what are we preventing? So if we're in this state of prevention, it's not good enough, because if I'm going to prevent cancer, I'm always preventing cancer. I'm putting that in my subconscious. I'm constantly thinking I'm preventing cancer. I'm getting these sense. So what we really have to do is to start to realize that our thoughts are so powerful that what is important is that we put in our subconscious what we really want. And what do we really want is to feel great and health and to be healed. And that is another thought. And so sometimes what I find with my clients is when they're constantly getting sick, they are not cleared of these things in their subconscious. Yes, I agree with you too that they can be in an evolutionary jump in their consciousness, and the frequency is so much higher, so they have to adjust to that frequency, and that can be another reason. But there can be so many that we can't say one person, everyone's having the same story, because we're all unique.
Right. And I think also, too, in closing, is to also understand that everybody's story is a different piece of the spectrum. I always have people understand that we are truly a ball of glitter. That's what I think of it as. I'm just a ball of glitter. I'm just this energy, a ball of glitter. And if you look at the cosmos, out there, there's a million balls of glitter, all different sizes and shapes and colors in different places. So just think of it that way and say, if that's truly what I am, all of this other stuff is just story. As I work with patients at end of life, it always comes to, what is my legacy, my obituary going to be about? And I'm going to say, honey, when you squeeze through that door, you just squeeze through this little tiny pinhole, and that human stuff in that story goes boop behind you, and all of a sudden it gets swept to the curb. So why are you holding on to it so dearly? I have seen people who don't even eat because they don't have enough money, because they're trying to hold on to a house, because they want to give it to their kids. The day they die, their kids are going to either burn the thing down, or they're going to give it to somebody else, or they're going to sell it and take the money and go party, whatever. So the idea is that our story only holds our story energy for ourselves. I see so much that people will say, I'm going to save this so I could give it to my kids and they will remember me by. No, they don't. It doesn't hold the same thing. Just as you think about quantum physics, once you give it or send it to something else, once it's out of your energy field, it no longer is the same. It has then changed. So the idea is that can we understand everything within our perspective is the same thing. When patients get to the end of life, they're like, this stack of shame and guilt and all this other stuff keeps coming up. And I said, word, it's a word, it's a word, it's a word. Exactly. And once we do this for like a very long extended period of time, it works because one patient, she was at the point, I said, why are you afraid to go? She says, because, after the storm, we bought this house and this car, and, and she needs my check to be able to pay the rent and blah, blah, blah. And I said, honey, you are going to be gone. Forget about it. You don't have to pay a bill anymore. And she went, whoa, okay, all right. And she says, but, how is she going to? I said, it isn't your story. It is not your story. So I think the idea is that we as humans, Kathleen, and we'll end on this, is that we as humans over the past several decades have grown up in a sort of paradigm. The paradigm is shifting. Yeah. Now we're being asked to have this other conceptual idea of the way the world can be. And we're kind of, since we're living longer, have a wide variation of the way in which we see the world, our body, our mind, and our spirit, and what the whole story is about. And to say, wow, look at this whole grand scenario. So we can be in any place at any time and say, thank you. That's all we're asking. Thank you. And once you say thank you, your body and your shoulders drop and you feel at ease and you just put your hand on your heart and you say thank you. Isn't that what we're asking of our own soul?
I think it's beautiful because if you're in gratitude is one of the highest frequencies and states you can be in. It's like up there with joy. So it's beautiful, and we can choose to be in that state, and that can change. That's one of those choices and what's happening to us, how we want to look at it, right? And we can also choose shame and guilt and all these other emotions. But I think as we start to realize we have the choice, we're all going to want to choose the higher frequencies because we're going to realize that we can choose. Before we were like, oh, we're just a victim to it, so we have no choice. No, we are powerful creators. Exactly. And I just want to say one last thing that I teach my students. There is a new definition of compassion. And the old definition, and this is what you were alluding to, the old definition is that like, oh, I feel so bad for this person. Oh, I have to kind of like we had to help them. We had to do it for them. But the truth is, the new definition is that we have to allow all the people their stories because they need them. And I help people heal for many years, and I had to learn this the hard way. I had to learn that people can ask me for help, but that it wasn't my job to just go and interfere with everything and help people, and including children and whatever, everyone in my immediate family. But at first I thought I had an obligation to make their story better. When I was young, it was something I started through the ancestors. But now I realize the new definition is to allow, out of love, everyone their own story. And that is not easy, but that really is what we're asked to do, unless they ask you for help. Otherwise, they really need that story, even if you don't like it. You might not like what they're choosing. You're allowing them, accepting that they need it and that it's beautiful just how it is. That's really great if we can learn to do that.
I look back at my son who has, tried to commit suicide 13 times, and it was drugs and alcohol, and all my kids have had these great challenges in life, as I did. And I look back at them and I say, but they were absolutely wonderful, because his scenario, he now works with kids at risk in crisis care and mental health, and asks
Yes.
their first question is, what is life and is it important to you? And what do you want to do with it? And he may start a month with 10 kids, and at the end of the month he might have 2 because they made another choice. But he instilled in their soul and their mind and their spirit for one moment. And that's, I think, what's important to understand, is that when you help, when you help or you're in the presence of someone else in this radiating light, it's only for a split second. It isn't there to change or to alter or to equilibrate or whatever you want to call it. You get to pick any word you want to.
Yeah.
It's just for that split second. And I think that's so vitally important to understand that it's for a very split second. And then it's sort of like, I call it like a blinking light in the mist. You see it. I know for myself, I might hear the birds, and I'll go outside and I'll take my phone and I go, oh, I'd love to get a picture of you. All of a sudden they stop. I come back in, they start again. I said, oh, you wanted me to hear your story and your chatter, but you didn't want me to capture you. And I think that's so important.
Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you. I like that. And I do think it's important because as we're growing in consciousness, we also realize that we're uniquely creating our reality. Mm-hmm. So when you interfere with someone else's story too much, also, then you're doing it out of, obviously, you think you're doing it out of love, but real love is just respecting that they are their own creator.
And this is a closing comment, and I've written it down just today. Every day I write stream of consciousness thoughts, and I wrote, my existence is not based on your beliefs to validate my existence. And I think that's so important. And I think we'll leave it at that. And Kathleen, can you share with the listeners how to find out more information about your work? That would be wonderful.
Oh, sure. I train health and wellness coaches at a high level of certification with the Wellness Revolution. That is my organization. And they get trained and certified with the National Board of Health and Wellness Coaching so they can work in the medical system, and they get trained holistically in body, mind, spirit, and soul, so they learn how to coach on all levels, which I think is so vitally important. And I also wrote this book, Your Creator Matrix, so that is my work. Thank you for asking.
It's such a great time to have you, Kathleen, at this time to speak, because I think as we share and engage in our stories, what we do is we help open the door, perhaps maybe be a breeze, to help others say, oof, maybe something else is coming along, or maybe just heal the heart or the mind of others. So I thank you so much for engaging in this conversation today.
Oh, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
If you'd like to find out more information about Cathleen Beerkens, again, the book is Your Creator Matrix. Please do click on the link on the bottom of today's show page to go directly to her website for more information. And it is about being able to say, how can I take a breath today and just stop? Get off the windmill of all of these human stories and everything that seems to be spinning around me. Believe me, the earth, the wind, the cosmos, the sun, everything is spinning at its own frequency too now. And if you're picking that up, it sure seems like you're just on tilt, and maybe you might need a new band for that new washing machine soon. So as we think about it, we say, it will be okay. Just sit for a moment, take a breath. When you start chaining those all together, you have a string of pearls, and you hold on to it each and every day to say we are all in this together. Thank you so much for joining us. This is Dr. Jeanette Gallagher, and until tomorrow, have a great day.
Today we discussed many life-changing concepts. Who do you turn to, and how do you know what is best when faced with a health crisis? Dr. Jeanette is a patient advocate. She listens to the patient, the doctors, and the family, clarifies the health issues and concerns, then helps the patient make the best choices going forward. If you would like help implementing change into your life and health, we can talk and see where you are stuck and how to improve the quality of your life. Check the link on the bottom of today's show page or visit drjeanettgallagher.com to schedule a phone appointment today.